What was childhood like for you? Did you have siblings and were your parents around?
Yeah. So I have a brother who's 2.5 years younger than me. And then I have, both my parents are still there in 78 and they're together. My mother was a career woman and so was my father. My father was an attorney and my mother ran nursing homes. She went to nursing school back when your options were go be a nurse or a teacher if you wanted a career. And so she went to nursing school and from there became a nursing home administrator and then oversaw 17 nursing homes.
Oh, wow.
Before the accident. Yeah. So my generation was the latchkey kids anyway. So my brother and I came home from school and, sort of had the run of our neighborhood with our neighborhood friends. And like I said, Tanya and I went to the same high school. We graduated about 60 some kids a class, real small little town. Mm-hmm. They put soccer in when my brother was still in high school and they had to get rid of the marching band because you couldn't play football and soccer at the same time because you didn't have enough kids. Yeah. So very small little community. My parents are technically still living up there. They spend most of their year down here in Florida now as retirees like everybody else down here, but they still have a place back in little Millersburg, Pennsylvania.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Were you a rambunctious kid? Were you getting into trouble? Were you?
No, I was the good one, I think. So my story is a little interesting because I was dyslexic. Mm-hmm. In 1980 and 78 when nobody really knew what that was. I was left-hand dominant and kind of forced to be a right-handed writer still when the writing specialist still came in and told you that's not how you write. You got to move the pencil to your other hand. And I had a speech impediment. I stuttered. So, a combination of those things in a little school were challenging. When I finally started to figure out this dyslexia thing in probably like 4th or 5th grade, a light bulb went off when I could read. It was helpful. Mm. But again, we grew up in an area where you went out with your friends in your neighborhood and played in we had a pond in our backyard and woods and screwed around. And sometime before it got dark, your mom would yell for you to come home and eat. And
the good old days. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We hear a lot about red flags in relationships, but what about the green flags? Signs of a good friend, a good partner. Therapy has helped me recognize not only these signs in other people, but in myself as well. BetterHelp has been an absolute game changer for my mental health. I struggled with setting boundaries and people pleasing. Therapy has helped me learn how to advocate for myself. I love BetterHelp's convenience. Everything is fully online, there's no commute, and you have access to over 30,000 licensed therapists. And if you don't like one, you can change to another at absolutely no cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/riseabove for 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/riseabove.
Yeah. And you just came home. Nobody knew where you were. And, I was a big daredevil kid. So when I say I was the one who didn't get in much trouble, my brother and I were still the ones who built half pipes for skateboarding in our backyard and skateboarded all over town and broke into the community pool in the wintertime to skateboard. And I was the one who would, my brother and I would build ski ramps and we were big skiers and in our across the pond and on the hill and then build jumps to try to jump the creek.
Love that.
So a lot of that silly kind of stuff. So I had a lot of stitches and a lot of broken bones. And again, my mother was a nurse and I can remember, breaking a bone and having my brothers look at me, oh, mom's going to be so mad. And we're like in, 1.5 foot of snowstorm and we're out there just screwing around. And, the closest hospital was a 30-minute drive over the mountain from where we live. And me sitting outside, holding my arm, not crying, but just going, I'm not telling mom I broke my arm. My brother's like, I'm not going to tell her. Finally, we've told her. And fortunately, my grandfather back in that day drove a Jeep Cherokee that, nobody had an SUV, but he did. And he could get me down to the hospital to set my arm. And I remember the doctor saying, we're going to, give him some shots of Novocaine. We're going to, my wrist was all in radius. We're both broken that time. And from landing on my arm. And I remember my mom saying, no, he doesn't need it. put his fingers in those Chinese finger locks hang a weight off it. We're going to pull those bones back together.
Yeah. Just reset it real quick.
set that arm. Yeah. So
can you describe for us what it's like for a child who is dyslexic? What are those feelings? And like, what are your thoughts? What are your experiences?
Well, you know what? If you would have asked me that a year ago, I would have said I can't. But I started therapy. I didn't do it for 15 years after the accident. Started working with therapists who specializes in PTSD for soldiers, because what I've been through, as we get to, will be very similar. And so, again, such a small little community, such a small little school, and not a lot of support related to that stuff. I just thought I couldn't read. Yeah, I didn't really recognize it as this, problem other than and again, I didn't care that much at that age to be how good of a student I was. It wasn't being instilled, you need to be a perfect student. And so, for me, it was very much, all right, this isn't easy. I don't get it. And it all doesn't make sense to me. Whatever the teacher's trying to show me to read in third grade, I'm like, doesn't click. And it was, like I said, it wasn't really till fifth grade that a specialist really started to help me understand that I was just reading things backwards and sort of reprogramming my brain, which is interesting now because I also had to do that to get off narcotics. I had to reprogram my brain to not deal with the constant pain management that I got from narcotics, because again, I needed it, and I had chronic, really bad pain, but how was I going to manage it? And I went to biofeedback, and again, same idea, just reprogramming your brain on how you think about things. Yeah. And so, once it kind of clicked on this reading thing, it became a prolific reader. And then I started my freshman year of college. I took a speed reading course because I was struggling to keep up as a political science economics major. And so a lot of reading, much more reading than I was used to in high school. And I'm like, I can't keep up with this. And they offered this speed reading course. Back then, it was nothing digital. It was just this thing that moved across the page and covered it. And you could set the speed and how fast you can make your eyes and comprehend. Because again, that was the other thing. Yeah. It doesn't matter how fast you can read if you don't comprehend it.
Right.
And so learning to train my brain to read faster was also super beneficial, to learning to get over this dyslexia. Because first I had to rearrange the words in my head. Then I had to do it as fast as I could to keep up with the demand. And, today I read 3 or 4 books at a time. Generally self-help.
Look at you.
Well, yeah. Well, I've been writing one for the last year and a half too. So it helps to read other people's stuff.
Of course. All the time. I mean, I have ADHD really bad. Reading one book is quite the order for myself, and it's a lot, but that's great, man.
Yeah. Well, again, just finding little experiences to grow. And again, both times, especially when you're younger, you don't get it. So it's like, all right, how important is this? And had it not been something that, I continued to try to work through, I don't know that would have, I definitely wouldn't have made it through college.
Yeah. You referenced drug addiction before. Yeah. Did that stem from your accident?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then let's go to the accident that you have mentioned a few times. Walk us through where you're at in life at that time, and then walk us through the day of your accident. What exactly happened?
Yeah. So at the time, it was December 1st of 2007. I'm 36 years old. We've got an 8-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. We are both working careers, and we're in the perfect 30s mode for us. Great group of friends, being able to travel. We had a young lady from Germany, an au pair, who helped us manage the kids because we were both working. And so, we had a 4-year-old who was just in preschool, and then an 8-year-old who was, already into elementary school. And so just trying to get some of that balance of both of us working. And but again, that day, actually, when we left that swim meet, we actually drove through a little prep school outside of DC that was close to where we were, with the concept that, we could send our kids to private boarding school as a reality, if that's something that they wanted, that we never had a chance growing up in our little town. And so I think, the day of the accident, we were probably feeling like we had everything, perfect. We had, pretty perfect marriage, pretty perfect work. Income was good. We weren't killing it, but we were living well. And 2 great kids. And we were leaving a swim meet. So it was a Saturday afternoon, and that swim meet was that morning. And so we had, our daughter was 8, and she had just, she had been swimming for 2 years already. And that 6 to 8 year old age group is, tough when you're 6, because there's a big difference between a 6 and a 7 year old and a 7 and 8 year old, and boys and girls, right? But she had reached, it was the first meet of the season, and she was finally in the top of her age group. She had won four blue ribbons that day. She was all proud of herself. She swam a 100-meter IM for a 4-year-old. That's 4 lengths of a pool, or 8-year-old. That's a haul for her. So we were on a high, and our goal when we were leaving was to stop and get a Christmas tree. We kind of bribed the 4-year-old James into like, if you're good, behave yourself through the swim meet. On our way home, we'll go get a Christmas tree. So, we were done. It was 12:30 in the afternoon. And then again, when were leaving the high school, it was James Buchanan High School, and it's a small rural area south of where we live, closer to the Maryland border. And we're like, you know what? Let's go the other direction. So instead of pulling out of the school and turn left and go home exactly the same way we came, we turned right and decided to take more of a scenic road home. And we were going to go drive through this boarding school, and drove through school, looked around. Our daughter was like, yeah, it's fine, but let's just go get the Christmas tree. Our son's like, yeah, we're done. Let's go get the Christmas tree. So we're driving a 55-mile undivided rural road. Around us is nothing but fields. We're headed back over to Interstate 81, which is the main interstate running through the area that we live, to go back home. And Whitetail ski area off to the right is blowing snow. So, we were already a skiing family at that point. Our daughter had been skiing. Our son had already started skiing at 3. And Tanya, my wife, points out, hey, look, they're making snow. We're going to be able to go skiing soon. And that's the very last memory I have. A car coming the other direction crossed the center line of the undivided road. We went driver to driver. And there were no skid marks on the road. So the police report estimated the impact speed at 125 miles an hour. They estimated that we were doing 55 and the other driver was going 70. No drugs or alcohol in his system. It's 1:00 in the afternoon. He was on a cell phone. This is 17 years ago, a flip phone, talking to his fiance, who had a 3-month-old baby. And that was, so he was, checking in on them. Something distracted him at the last second, because like I said, no skin marks. I didn't see him. He didn't see me. We went driver to driver. So he was driving a Jetta and no seatbelt. So he was pronounced dead at the scene. Cars, smashed. I can show you photos. It's brutal to see both our cars. I was completely unconscious. My wife, Tanya, was sitting in the front passenger seat. She was unconscious. Our son, James, the 4-year-old, was sitting in a booster seat directly behind me. My seat came back into him, and he must have put his leg up. So his fibula and tibia in his left leg were snapped. Everybody had broken collarbones from the seatbelt. Everybody had some degree of lacerations across their stomach or damage from the seatbelt doing what it should do. Lots of cuts from shattered glass. But as a whole, we were driving a new Acura RDX, this smaller little SUV that was my wife's car, less than a year old. It did what it was supposed to do. The airbags deployed again. The split second that it took for all that to happen at 125 meant that I took the brunt of all of it. So for me, I had a ruptured spleen, a ruptured diaphragm. The ruptured diaphragm caused my left lung to completely collapse. My pelvis was shattered. The energy traveled up my left leg from the impact, shattered my pelvis 3.5 inches apart. Doctors later tell me pelvis is like a lifesaver. You can't just break it in one side. It's going to break in half. So the backside of my pelvis was also shattered. And then my tailbone fractured. And then the next 4 vertebrae, L1 through L4, all fractured in my back, all from the energy that traveled up. The ruptured spleen, the ruptured diaphragm, were going to kill me. I mean, fortunately, I was a runner. I ran high school. I ran in college. I was mostly a sprinter and jumper. But when I got out of college, I decided that, like most people, if you want to run, you just keep adding more miles. And so I'd run a marathon. I'd run half marathons. And in fact, I had to run 15 miles that morning. So losing my left lung completely, actually, the fact that 1, I didn't have a lot of body fat on my body, and 2, my lungs were strong. I was able to survive till I got to the hospital with just 1 lung. Also, when they had to cut me open, there wasn't a lot of extra fat around my cavity, chest, and everything to deal with. Tanya was unconscious, broken ribs, broken hand, broken foot, broken collarbone from the seatbelt. Our daughter, Katie, the 8-year-old who just got finished swimming, wasn't unconscious. We knew this, but we never knew the details of it till about 6 or 8 months later. A letter came to our house addressed to my wife, and it was from the woman who lived right in the house, right close to where the accident happened. And it was her her son, who was the first person that at the scene of the accident. He had been pulling in to visit his mom, adult male, and heard the collision, called 911, and then ran down to see if he could help. And he found our daughter in the car, trying to crawl between the front seats, crying, "Daddy, don't die." I don't think we really knew the severity of what that scene was, because we were all unconscious until we received that letter. And again, it was addressed to Tanya because they didn't think I survived.
This person showed up how fast after the accident? How long was the time until he heard it? So it was pretty quick.
Yeah, he heard it. He called 911. Where we were was pretty rural. So I would think it was probably 15 minutes plus till we even got ambulances on scene. Mm-hmm. And then my son and I were flown by Penn State Hershey Medical helicopter called Lifeline. So Penn State's mascot is the Nittany Lion. So this called the Lifeline. And they have 2 helicopters. They keep one in Hershey at the hospital, and they happen to keep one in our hometown of Carlisle out at the little airport. And that helicopter exists to reach into this region of southern Pennsylvania that's pretty rural because, honestly, the closest trauma hospital was University of Maryland in Baltimore. And we were outside of Hagerstown, Maryland. So even that was a good distance. And so the fact that this helicopter existed in Carlisle and that they were able to disband it down to us saved my life. I arrived at the hospital with less than 3% chance of surviving. And again, functioning with a ton of internal bleeding, never mind all the orthopedic shattered pelvis. My foot was shattered. The car, I'm 6'2". The car engine buckled down and smashed my feet. I was wearing a pair of Crocs inside this hot swimming pool and sweatpants, and I still had the Crocs on. And when they pulled me out, they apparently pulled me out of my Crocs because when the investigators went to look at the car, my Crocs were still stuck under the engine block. So had that helicopter not existed there, I wouldn't be here because I wouldn't have got to the hospital in time.
Did they put you in a coma or did you go into a coma?
Both. So I was in a coma. I was unconscious in a coma.
Yep.
Lack of blood. I took 38 units of blood in the first 24 hours. So guys like our size, probably 8 to 10 units of blood inside our body. So I bled out 3 times.
Oh my God.
And then, once I stayed open for 3 days, my whole cavity, because they kept trying to repair internal bleeding, right? They removed my spleen completely. It was ruptured, and repaired my diaphragm. And then I had a tube to inflate my left lung. And so after 3 days of trying to deal with this internal bleeding, and again, all this bleed out and this constantly putting new blood back in me, they decided that from an infection standpoint, they had to close me. They weren't sure I was going to make it or not, but they weren't able to pull my abdominal muscles closed. It's too swollen at this point. And so all they did is pull the fascia layer of my skin across and stitched me shut with big blue sutures like your grandfather would have got for open heart surgery. No plastic surgeon was in there making that look pretty because they just figured they're going to have to cut me open again anyway. And so they sewed me shut. And then they started to repair orthopedic stuff. So then they kept me in an induced coma for 18 days. Because of my pelvis being shattered and being 3.5 inches apart. Like it was pulled up 3.5 inches. They put a steel rod through my left knee and hung a weight off the end of it to pull my pelvis back down. So for 5 or 6 days, I just spent time with this weight with my leg hanging off of the edge to pull my pelvis back down. So they put a titanium plate across it with 6 titanium screws. And like I said, it's going to snap in the front and the back. So in the back has 2 6-inch screws that hold the backside of my pelvis together. At the time, they weren't sure if they're going to have to fasten my vertebrae, So they needed to, they was going to let it go. And then while I was still in the hospital, did a couple x-rays after 20 some days to see if it was healing. And at the time they were like, yeah, it's starting to heal on its own. And we're going to make you non-weight bearing. So I couldn't feel either of my legs at the time. Like I woke up out of coma when they tried to take me off on day 17 and I couldn't breathe on my own. So I was on a ventilator, took off the ventilator, couldn't breathe. So they decided to try again the next day, and I was able to breathe on my own. Tanya still can't drive at this point. So she is now going back and forth from Hershey Hospital, Penn State, to our town of Carlisle, which is about 45 minutes. Can't drive a car. When our son's in the hospital for 10 days and she's staying in a hotel with my parents right across the street from the hospital, so she could be close to both of us. But when the kids got to go home, she went home with them to help and then came to the hospital every day while I was still in a coma. And so when I was getting brought out of coma, they called her. She was still back home and said that he's out of the coma. He's breathing on his own. And so she obviously wanted to get over. So one of my really close friends who lives up there picked her up, drove her over. I don't remember the story, but my friend, he no longer is with us. He committed suicide. Great, another story. But John was there with Tanya and would love to tell everybody this story all the time after the accident. So they walk to the door of my room and they're standing at the door and I'm with a nurse and the nurse says, "Do you know who that is?" And I look up and I say, "Yeah, that's the bulldog. I've been in a coma for 18 days." And the first thing I said, I called my wife the bulldog. I have no memory about it. She will document it. And so will. And my best friend John would say it all yeah.
Oh,
Coma for 18 days, you almost died. You called your wife the bulldog. That's a lot of balls.
Amazing.
Right,
and your wife's here and her face is turning so red right now. I love it. It's amazing. That's a great story.
Yeah. But yeah, so I was induced coma, mostly for healing purposes at that point.
So you are in a coma for 18 days. They bring you out of the coma after 18 days following the accident. You didn't remember initially. What is the first memory that you have from after the accident? So
that is one of the very first things I ever started documenting because I had the most crazy hallucinations ever. So all of those drugs they used to keep me in induced coma are all now inside my body, right? Mm. So put it in proportion, I was 185 pounds, 6'2", running a lot, so thin, right? At one point, I weighed 230 pounds because the bed would weigh me. And my wife Tyra was like, "Yeah, you were like so swollen. That's why they couldn't pull your abdominal muscles closed. You were just so puffy, full of fluid. So when they brought me out of this coma, all those drugs that they had in me, both for pain, and hold me in this coma, just all started coming through my body. So like my very first memory was me sitting on plastic crates of Gatorade, hooked up to my body to keep my body alive, with colored tubes running around the top of the room, and this Gatorade and going through my body and me sinking farther and farther down into these plastic containers full of Gatorade.
And this is a hallucination, obviously.
I'm telling you, I'm not sure. And I keep saying to my nurse, I said, when is this Gatorade all going to be in my body? And he's like, you're in a bed. And I'm like, that's not helpful. And then I pass out from pain. And then I would wake up again and I'd be like, why is this freaking person screaming why do they keep waking me up? And I'm like, can you tell that person to stop screaming? My nurse is like, not saying anything to me. I'm like, and when's this Gatorade going to be done? And all I keep picturing, I close my eyes, and because I couldn't keep my eyes open. Every time I close my eyes, all I'd see is strobe lights going off in my head, and like devil faces popping up over and over again inside my vision. And I couldn't open my eyes because I couldn't keep them open. And then I'd open them. I'm like, oh, this damn Gatorade is still here. And then I'm like, why are they throwing like bedpans full of urine and Gatorade out the hallway? And why is everybody doing this? And I'm like, and who the fuck keeps screaming?
Yeah.
I got to stop the screaming. And I literally 2 days it's going on. And I'm finally like, holy shit, that's me screaming. Like, I had no clue. I would scream out and so drugged up, I didn't know where it was coming from.
Yeah. So you had these like crazy thoughts, hallucinations.
Crazy hallucinations until probably I was in ICU, and then I was in a traditional room during my 20 some days there. I remember 6 rooms. I remember one with thatch roof. Just again, unreal stories. I remember walking outside the hospital in a construction site and meeting my deceased grandfather, and trying to get back into the hospital through a door that wouldn't open. And I'm standing in the mud and I'm standing in plastic in this construction site. And I'm like, I can't get in. My grandfather would be like, your father's coming for you. He loves you. This was my dad's dad. So again, to this day, I'm capital F, small F. I'm a Christian, I'm a religious guy. So I don't know which one of my fathers was coming for me, but
that's a good point.
But either way, I what the craziest part of all that hallucination on that one was, I spent my entire time flat on my back. I was 10 weeks non-weight bearing. So even when I left the hospital, I went to a nursing home. Yeah. Because I couldn't go to rehab. Yeah. And so the very first time I ever went back to Hershey Hospital for a doctor's appointment that wasn't in a transport on a gurney via an ambulance transport, which would happen multiple times a week to go back and forth for appointments from the nursing home. We're driving and I'm like, Tanya said, my room was right over there. She goes, when you were in ICU, it was. How do you know? I said, because I was outside. Hershey was doing a major addition project right next to my room, of which I could never see out the window. And it was giant steel beams and plastic and mud. And it was where I was sitting outside the hospital.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it was like 3 months afterwards that we went back. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit, that's where my room was. She's like, it is. Why? Why do you say that? And I never told anyone the story until her about my grandfather. And then my grandmother was still alive. And I waited a whole nother year even to just go tell her, because it was just, it was just sort of that time I wasn't ready to say like, okay, something out of body happened. I remember seeing my body on an operating table. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if I want to share that with anybody right now. Yeah. And it took a long time. It took me writing in a book before I was okay with it.
Yeah. It's a traumatic event. And
that also, it brings a whole nother element that makes everyone else have to come to either accept it as, it's okay. You had you almost died, and you very could have seen your grandfather who's, deceased and you believe is in heaven, or you could have seen your own body, or, you were also hanging out with Tiger Woods at one point in the hospital. So you're having a lot of hallucinations. So let's, just decide which ones you're okay with and which ones you're not okay with.
What kind of pain medication did they put you on following the accident when you got out of the hospital?
So I went from hospital to nursing home.
Okay.
So in the nursing home, in the hospital the whole time, everything's intravenous IV, right?
Yeah.
So, have the little clicky button and, click that thing as often as I could. Of course, it was only going to dispense morphine when it was set to
outside of the hospital. What did they prescribe you?
Yeah. So when I first got in, I was still taking morphine, but as a tablet. And, as from a lot of people talk, like that addiction level is all based off the fact that whatever works doesn't work after a certain period of time, right? So the easiest thing to do is to either start increasing dosages and then start flipping meds. And this is 17 years ago.
It's tolerance. It's building tolerance.
And nobody at that point was having any conversation about narcotic addiction at all, right?
2007, 2008, 2009. It was like on its way up.
Yeah. Yep. The use was huge. And by the way, I 100% needed it. There was no question.
Mm-hmm.
I was in tremendous amount of pain. So we did a lot of, starting with morphine, then fentanyl in the form of patch. While I was in the nursing home, I had my first withdrawal, not on purpose. While I was in that short-term wing of the nursing home, again, I'm 36 years old, 37 years old, and everybody in there's 70 recovering from a hip replacement or knee. Like, I was very unique person in that nursing home, age-wise. And so I saw a doctor, a family doctor, who would come in and take care of narcotics and other medical types of thing. And he had changed my morphine and tried to lower the dose, but didn't tell anybody. And so I'm sitting in flat in a bed and feeling a tremendous amount of pain all the time, but mind numbing pain. But all of a sudden it's different. I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm freezing to death. My head is crushing me and killing me. Tanya's not there. And so I tell my nurse, I'm like, I feel really bad. And this is middle of January. And all of a sudden they think, oh, he has the flu. He's sweating, he's shivering, he's hot, he's cold, his bed is getting drenched. And so Tanya shows up that afternoon and she's like, maybe it's a flu, but I don't think it is. And so we're fortunate. Some of our good friends are doctors. And so she gets on the phone and calls one of our good friends who happens to be a anesthesiologist, pain doctor. And he's like,
withdrawal.
That sounds like withdrawal.
Yeah.
So the doctor who prescribed it actually is over at the hospital, but with his wife who's giving birth. So he was not answering his cell phone because his wife's in labor. Fortunately, our friend is at the hospital. So he goes and finds him. He says, oh yeah, we adjusted it. Well, the nurse over adjusted it and cut it in half. And I was going through withdrawal. So they got me a pill and I can tell you, 15 minutes later, you feel perfectly normal again.
Oh my God. I have a lot of experiences.
Yeah.
In an uncontrolled environment.
Yeah. So when so that was my first, and I knew, this was going to be a thing. So by the time I made the decision, and by the way, it was my decision to get off narcotics. I had pain management specialists at that point. They were like, you're going to need to stay on it. You have so much, constant pain that's, not going to allow you to function. I mean, at this point, I'm in a wheelchair for the better part of 6 months, and then I need a wheelchair, but I can use a walker. I still can't use my left leg. So I'm trying to do, I did, inpatient rehab, and then I'm doing outpatient rehab, just trying to learn to function, some quality of life. And I'm taking 90 milligrams of morphine twice a day.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Yeah.
You're a zombie.
Yeah. I could function. I had built up over 2 years.
The tolerance, so you were able to do things.
I was driving a car. Shouldn't have been. was drinking alcohol with it.
So did you when you stopped, did you cut yourself off for good?
I went, so they didn't want me to go at all. And I said, well, let's do this. Let's go 90 to 60. So I had to have a bunch of additional surgeries. So I've had 45 surgeries in 17 years.
You had 45 surgeries.
Yeah, I've never gone a year without a surgery.
When was your last surgery?
Just this fall.
What was it on?
I've had 10 surgeries now at UNC Chapel Hill, all on veins that have all been damaged either through here or through my legs to keep my left leg. I've been as high as 85% chance of amputation of my left leg below knee, just because of circulatory problems. And so I'm stented now from the folds in both my legs to both my kidneys.
Okay.
My femoral veins are stented open completely because of the scarring that would cause blood clots and veins to close shut. And my legs are stained purple from all the platelets and capillaries rupturing all the time from all the pressure. So when I went from 90 to 60, I went through 2 days of withdrawal. Most excruciating. Again, same thing I went through, only now it's 2 days, of just sweating.
Flu-like symptoms.
Yeah. Miserable, head hurting. And again, the whole time knowing that literally, because I've already experienced it one time, like, give me the pill, 15 minutes later, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to do this. And my doctor's like, you don't have to do this. And I'm like, I'm going through it. And so I went 90 to 60 right after they had just closed my abdominal muscles. So I had to wait pretty long time to go back and have my abdominal muscles closed. So I stayed at 60 for half a year. All the time, I now start biofeedback with this idea that I'm going to reroute the pain. The pain hurts, the tolerances for my pain, and let my brain find another way. I don't know if you know how it works, but basically back then, the sciences have gotten a lot more, a little better now. You would get hooked up to electrodes. Those electrodes are hooked up to computer software. In front of you is either a movie or music, right? And you will sit there with these electrodes, and every time that the pain or stress or any other low hertz, so you're on the scale of your brain waves, the lower hertz levels are pain, fear, some of the more depressing stuff. The top stuff is happiness, joy, right? So anytime these hertz levels drop this low, the movie or the music, I'd listen to AC/DC, so mine was music, and it would cut off. Do you remember when Netflix streaming would have to buffer and you'd be watching something and it would drive you nuts because all of a sudden you're watching something and start buffering?
Yeah, you see the little circle thing.
Yeah. Or you're sitting in a room full of the AC unit running and all of a sudden it shuts off. You're like we were talking the whole time and never noticed it. The concept is every time that these pain levels would flare up, it would interrupt whatever you're doing, and that would reroute over time. So eventually your brain would say like, well, this is annoying. Every time, we go at this level, whatever we're concentrating on is going to be interrupted. The music will stop. The movie will skip. And it just starts annoying your brain. So eventually over a 6-month period of time, my brain starts to reroute those.
It's reprogramming.
It's reprogramming itself to skip that pain, right? So I go 90 to 60 and I'm now functioning in a combination of learning to manage pain without the narcotics, with acupuncture, with biofeedback.
How long does that last?
The biofeedback's permanent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the best.
Well, how long did
6 months.
like these different, the reprogramming, acupuncture, how long did it help with the pain? I'm assuming you go back to the pain meds.
Nope. I go 90 to 60. I'm staying at 60. And now I decide I'm going 60 to 30.
So you go now all the way from 90
to 60
to 30.
Spend 6 months taking 60.
Okay.
While doing acupuncture,
reprogramming.
And again, the biofeedback, it works. I'm a big believer in it, especially for addiction, but it is not something, and what the changes are very permanent. Once it happens, it doesn't go away. Your brain's not going to go back to the old routing. but it doesn't happen automatically. So when I go 60 to 30, instead of being like 2 days, it's like 5-6 days.
The detox.
The detox is just killing me to the point where finally, like Tanya calls my friend, my friend takes over my pain management. So we called Dan and he's like, all right, we're going to supplement with Percocet because you can't, like, she can't watch me suffer like this. And it's a lot. And my kids are at home. Like I'm not in a rehab facility for this. I'm doing it at home. And so I'm just in a bed and I can't move very well to begin with. So it's just a combination, right? So we're supplementing some Percocet and, so I'm now, but I get the Percocet weaned and I'm now taking 30 milligrams of morphine twice a day.
Okay.
And again, about 6 months of it. And I'm having more surgeries in between. So that's the other part of it.
You're trying to get off and then you keep getting dragged back into surgeries and then you're trying to manage the pain and
recovery pain. So I'm dealing with a lot more recovery pain also from the procedures that I should be getting. But because again, my tolerance at 30 is barely covering any of the masking the pain enough under normal circumstances without more surgery. And so when I decide after 6 months that I'm ready to give up 30, now biofeedback's making a big difference in my life. Acupuncture's making a big difference in my life. I now quit outpatient rehab after 2 years and I'm now working out on my own. Because again, I was a marathon runner. There was nobody in rehab who was going to push me anywhere remotely hard as I want to push myself. Because again, I'm in a small town rehab. Most people in there are recovering from hip replacements and knee replacements. And, they're my parents' age at the time. They're like in their 50s and 60s and they don't know what to do with a guy like me. Fortunately, my second rehab therapist for outpatient rehab was a younger guy. And so I'm sitting at home doing work. I own a real estate company as well. And I'm just working at my desk. And my daughter is now 10 and she's out front juggling a soccer ball. She thought she was going to be the next Mia Hamm, loves soccer. She loved it since she was a little girl. So she'd be, every time she's home from school, when she doesn't have practice, she's just out in the yard juggling soccer balls. I can see her out there. And next thing I look out, she's not there. And she comes in the front door and she's crying. And I'm like, oh, what's wrong, honey? Come in here. And she comes in my office and she sits in my lap. And I said, what's wrong? Did you hurt yourself? She goes, I miss my old daddy, the one who would train with me. I'm like, that was worse than any fucking thing I had to go through. That was worse than any pain because now, I'm still struggling with why I'm alive. How, 3% chance of survival, other drivers dead. Why am I here? And, the only thing that was ever told to me was, maybe you're here just to watch your kids grow up. Maybe you're here to be a dad. Can't that be enough? And I'm like, that's a good answer. I can get behind that. And now I'm doing the one thing poorly that I said that I was going to do. And so I literally went into my rehab the next day. I'm driving myself in there and I'm walking with a walker or a cane, depending on how I'm feeling that day. And I go in and I say, I quit. It's like rehab's at 10 in the morning. So it's like a little before 10. He's like, I get it. I said, I just got to do this on my own. The rest of it, I've been at this for almost 2 years now. And I'm just going to do it on my own. And so I don't tell Tanya I'm quitting. She doesn't know.
I'm sure she was thrilled.
Yeah. So I get in my car and I drive like a mile down the road to our local YMCA. And I walk in there at 10 a.m. And I walk into the fitness center. And unbeknownst to me, 10 a.m., United Cerebral Palsy, UCP, runs a program for adults with special needs with trainers. So I get in there and there's 12 or 15, 20 to 30 some year old adults, a lot of people with Down syndrome, and they're just in there working out with their trainers. So, I'm in there on a walker. I go over and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do the circuit machines. And I had lifted a ton in college and high school and lifted a ton afterwards. And so I was pretty, for a guy who was running marathons, I was still hanging at 180, 185 and with some muscle. I was not a 165 runner by any means. And so So I knew what I was doing, but I had not seen anything other than physical therapy, in any level since a car accident. So I go over to the first machine, and it's just a press machine for chest. And, there's a guy on the thing, special needs adult, and he gets off the thing, and I just go and get into the machine, and I go, it doesn't move. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, great. This is embarrassing.
It was the voice of your daughter in your head too at that time.
I'm like, I go and move it up like 3 plates, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like 30, 40 pounds what I put it on.
And this is bench press.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
light. Not much.
Yeah.
Yeah, at all. And I'm like, oh, all right. So I go to the next machine, and literally I don't even look. I just take it and move it up. I just go to the third machine. I'm just following this guy through the circuit, right? And I'm like, oh my God, this is so fucking depressing. I'm like, forget it. I'm just going to go over on the stationary bike. And they had, the recumbent stationary, which I had been on ton physical therapy, where you just kind of, your legs are in front of you for a stationary bike versus sitting, because, my back being what it was, that was always in recumbent. So I get in this recumbent bike, and I'm thinking, well, the one at the therapist, the physical therapy, I'd set that like a 3. So I set it a 3. And I set the timer for 15, and I'm pedaling, and I'm sweating. I got sweatpants on, like a long sleeve t-shirt on at this point, because I was just going to regular physical therapy, which is what I would wear. And I'm looking, and I'm sweating, and I'm looking over, and here's this young woman with Down syndrome sitting on the machine. She's got it set at 6. She's already got 15 minutes in. And I'm like, this sucks. And I left, and I was home by 10:45. So I made it maybe 30 minutes there. And I thought, this is horrific. And I'm taking 30 milligrams of morphine still for pain management. I call it a day. I called Tanya, and I said, I quit rehab today, and I went to the Y. She's like, oh. I was like, I need to kind of do this on my own, but it went really bad, by the way. And I don't know what I'm going to do. She's like, okay, don't forget you're getting the kids at 3. I'm like, okay. I'm like, we're still operating a family, right? There's still responsibility. No matter what's going on, I still have my shit to take care of. Yeah. And so I'm just depressed. I don't do anything all day. Lay in my bed and go get the kids. And that night, I'm talking to Tanya a little bit about it. And I'm like, I don't think this is going to work. It was, what I was capable of. I didn't want to do things anymore that I couldn't do at the level I did before the accident. Like, it was depressing. And I'm like, this sucks. So I don't sleep well. So it is, because again, my back was broken, my pelvis shattered. I'm not comfortable through the night, no matter what. I have all constant nerve pain through my left leg that feels like my legs asleep all the time. Still have it today. And so my sleeping patterns were still really bad. But that night, I wake up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I'm like, holy fuck, my shoulder hurts. This is the first time in almost 2 years that I didn't wake up going, my back hurts, my pelvis hurts, my leg hurts. I'm like, oh, I did that. That's from the gym today. I'm like, I kind of like that. And I started that next day with this concept of pain I could control. That, I have, pushed myself every time going, you know what? This doesn't hurt enough yet. It's not going to hurt later. I need this to hurt on some level so that I can identify that it's something that I chose to do versus something I have no control over.
It was a gain.
Yeah. And again, it was mentally a little iffy, but to this day, it is, I'm now 215, I'm about 8% body fat. I'm 53 years old. I'm just this big because, one, I need my frame to hold up, because half my stuff doesn't work. I still only have half of an I'm missing half my abdominal muscles. It's just Gore-Tex mesh. I don't have any core strength. Can't use my left leg. And so everything has been this whole idea of, 1, I need to be strong. And 2, I need to keep pushing myself harder, because otherwise, anybody who works out knows at some point you kind of build a tolerance to that too, right? Yep. And so just like drugs, whatever I was doing wasn't enough anymore, and I needed more. I needed to push myself a little harder so I could get a little more pain. And so I could wake up and say, my back hurts and my shoulders hurt from the gym, and they don't hurt because of the accident. And so, I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm getting off the narcotics. And so I'm like, I'm going off.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, then we're going to supplement with Percocet this time. We're not even going to mess. He's like, you can go off. You're going to go through withdrawal, but we're throwing Percocet in. So then all I can remember is like the container of Percocet looked like you got it at Costco. It was that big.
At that time, they were probably selling them at Costco too.
Yeah,
they were just giving them away in 08, 09, 2010.
Yeah. You know, like when you go in and you buy that big container of Advil
Yeah, of
or
course.
Motrin? Yeah,
Of
that's
course.
the size of
There's a jug.
Yeah.
You
That's
had
the
a jug
size
of
of Percocet
Perks.
they gave me. Tanya used to say all the time, like, do you really understand like how much we had bags and bags and bags of drugs.
Does your addiction go out of control from here? Or where do you go with your addiction? Did you end up, like, you get all these perks?
Yeah.
Walk us through from when
so-
you were given the perks up until today, like where you're at with your addiction journey.
So let me tell you the one thing that Tanya did that was the smartest thing that we could have done. Because again, we all know how it works. You need more every time, right?
Yep. She hit him.
She had them all. And she put my medication out. And I take other things too. Like I was on a lot of stuff.
She was
So
holding you accountable.
Yeah. She would put them all in a container. And I had my morning one and my afternoon one in those containers. And if I took an extra one, I had to go ask her for them.
Because she loves you and she cares about you. And you guys are here married 30 years later after you met in senior year of high school.
Yeah.
You have a great wife.
Yeah. Yeah. And she kept me again. So and for me, my ego would get in the way anyway. So it was zero chance I was going to go grovel for an extra pain med.
Yeah.
Now, you know, if I needed some of those Percocet, she would give them to me, particularly when I was going through, you know, withdrawals. But at the same time, I didn't have access to them. So when I quit Percocet, which was the last thing I was taking, it had been about 3 years.
What year are we in at this point?
2010.
2000
End of 2009 into 2010. The accident happened in 2007.
is when you stopped doing the Percocet.
Yeah, I stopped all narcotics at that point.
Okay. This is what I want to hear about. I love this. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So when I quit, I had already been putting in almost a year of all the biofeedback. I was constantly learning about alternative pain management. Tanya was this is before the internet was just a bottomless pit. So it was a lot harder to find alternative,
of course,
pain treatments, right?
Of course.
Fortunately, a New York City trained acupuncturist happened to come back into our hometown because of a guy that she was in a relationship with and set up shop when we didn't really have acupuncturists. And to this day, Ruth is still my acupuncturist, and we both had dark hair when we started. So we've been at it a long time, but we were constantly trying to find other alternative ways to manage pain.
Yeah.
Reiki, reflexology, I was open to that point to anything anybody suggested. And Tanya's like, I'll find a place, I'll find a person, we'll get it done.
Yeah.
And so when I went off completely, I was benching over 300 pounds. I was in the gym 6 days a week. It became, my drug became putting myself in pain in the gym. I wanted to try to run again. I tried, and actually 2 years afterwards, the year that the accident happened, it was a late Thanksgiving. So literally that Saturday was the Saturday right after Thanksgiving, December 1st. So Thanksgiving was that Thursday late that year. So I'd run a 5K with our daughter and our whole family that morning on Thanksgiving Day. I always ran that turkey trot. You know, I could run that in a 5:10, 5:15 minute mile for 3 miles. Could fly that course. I wanted to do it the year after the accident. I'm on a walker. I have my friends. I took me 1 hour and 5 minutes with stops and people holding me up along the way, but I did it.
Yeah.
2 years afterwards, I wanted to try to do it again. Still had this idea I was going to run again. I kept telling everybody I was going to run again. And people kept telling me, you should be happy you're alive. You know, you should be in a wheelchair, just be happy. Oh, you should use the walker, just be happy. I ran it and I ran 12-minute miles. That's the best I could do. And I was like, this sucks. I don't like this. So then the gym thing became even more because now I needed this outlet, right? And so it wasn't going to be running because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I could never run again anywhere close to the level I could run before. So the gym became my drug. And so this concept of one, I could push myself to create more pain that I could control. But just like the narcotics, if it didn't, at a certain point, it didn't get sore anymore. So then I had to find another way to get, to keep pushing. I had to, increase volume. I had to increase reps. I had to, increase, the days that I would put in, just so I could get sore. And, the translation of that was I could bench 330 pounds, and I was 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And then I discovered Spartan racing, which I don't know if you're familiar with these obstacle race things.
I'm familiar with. I've never done one, but I see it all the time.
Yeah, up in the Northeast, we run these things.
They're huge.
Up ski hills.
Yeah.
We go ski slopes in the summertime and do these things.
So now you're starting to do Spartan races.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden that stuff starts turning into, we want to sponsor you.
Wow. What year is this?
This is now 2011.
Okay.
So now I'm I'm 2 or 3 years into working out now. I start showing up and all of a sudden, Men's Fitness magazine runs a feature on me because our story was a feel-good story. Nobody died.
Well, it's a comeback story of the century. Yeah, it's amazing.
And then again, I push through. I keep having surgery. The whole time I'm doing these Spartan races and working out, I'm in many of those times wrapped in a plaster cast in my left leg, trying to keep my left leg from losing it because I get these ulcers that would open up from circulatory problems. And all they did, these things called Uniboots, which they wrap you up in plaster and keep compression on your leg the whole time.
Yeah.
And so, that was a whole entire, again, another setback. And I'm sitting there going, all right, how do I deal with this one? How do I fix this problem? And I don't know the answer. And so fortunately, I've been really blessed to have great doctors who, if I had to get rid of some, I will tell you, I had a cardiologist who said I should be happy I'm just alive and not want to push myself. And I got a new cardiologist. But I had a wound doctor dealing with these ulcers who would go to conferences and say, nobody really has what I have who isn't a diabetic or isn't a soldier getting blown up. And so we're close to Walter Reed, but I'm not military. I don't have access.
Right.
But we find this doctor down in North Carolina, at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, Dr. Marston, who is the top vein guy in the country. And he's like, I don't know if I can fix you, but I'm interested in seeing what you can do. And so he's the one who's performed my last 10 surgeries. And it's all based off this idea that, we're going to find somebody who believes in us, and whether it's going to work out or it's not going to work out, that person is going to be, our advocate. And so, I've been up for experimental stuff that I haven't had to take advantage of on my leg because of the fact that, I've got this doctor who keeps, tabs on me and it's like, I don't have any other patients like you. Most of my patients are overweight diabetics, but I'm interested. So let's just see what happens. And that, again, it's been sort of the journey. It's keep finding people who want to advocate for you and build the team.
Where are you at today, and what are the top 3 tools that got you to where you are today?
So today I'm still speaking. I used to speak a lot, and now I'm back to doing it again. So doing some coaching. I have a book that's coming out in October.
What's the name of it?
The Upside of Down.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm in second edit right now. I just turned in the first edit on Monday.
That's amazing.
So it'll come out October 7th. And in that book, the first part of the book I wrote years ago for my kids because I was losing my mind on all this narcotics. I went to a wedding for a friend and had no memory of going to it because I was taking that much drugs. And so I just started, because my kids weren't old enough to understand then, other than they knew their dad wasn't the same dad. But other than that, they really weren't ready to understand. And so I started writing just to keep a journal of what happened. That became a memoir that never got published. And now I wrote another 20-some thousand words of how to overcome setbacks and adversity. So, answer your question, there are 8 that I really coach and talk about, 8 kind of pillars that you need to have. But there are 2 of them that I think are the most critical. The first one's commitment. Because if you're not in a mental and physical place to take on the challenge, no matter how badly someone may tell you, oh, you shouldn't take drugs. Oh, you shouldn't smoke. Oh, you're obese. Oh, your relationship is falling apart. If you're not in a place that you are ready to tackle that, it doesn't matter how many people tell you. Everyone knows smoking is bad for you, but people still smoke. Like, you've got to be ready to tackle that. You've got to have the bandwidth to do it. You've got to have the support system to do it. And you've got to be ready to tackle it. The second one is really the most important thing that I can take away from all this. And that is, don't worry about your goals. I had to give up having goals because I had goals to run, I had goals to walk. And what I eventually learned, and I learned it a lot from working out with adults with special needs who just love to work out, is if, we all hurry up to get to the finish line. We're all ready to, cross the end zone. But mostly that's disappointing when it happens. Like, I set a goal to be able to run 2 years afterwards. I ran it. It was 12-minute mile pace, and I felt like shit. And the next day I was like, what am I going to do? The process is the most beautiful thing. If you can fall in love with the process of doing what you're doing, then it's a change. Now the finish line, you just want to keep moving those goalposts. You don't want it to end. If you already worked out today and now you wish you can't wait till tomorrow to do it. Or when I started writing this book, I was like, I could just stay here all day and keep writing because I'm loving the process of it right now. And I didn't, and that doesn't happen automatically for anybody. So as you're going through this journey to make transition or make real change in your life, there's lots of steps. I count 8 of them personally, but the number one, most important one is fall in love with the process. If you fall in love with the process, it's where the beauty happens. It's where everything that you're doing now becomes this encompassing thing that you can't wait to do again. And then, you know what? If you hit that goal, so be it. You're just going to keep pushing yourself a little towards, moving that goal farther away because you don't want it to end.
What piece of advice would you have for the listener who's at the bottom of the hill where you were right after the accident in 2007, early 2008? What piece of advice would you have for that listener in that position right now?
You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be intentional. Get started. I mean, if you just have to make small incremental changes and then momentum kicks in. It's about not letting, paralysis by analysis kick in, right? We don't know how to start. We don't know what to do. Just be intentional. Go at it every single day. You'll see momentum will start to build if you just get up. I mean, I used to tell people I have a perfect workout and then I have a workout, right? My perfect workout consists of an hour workout in the gym, followed by a sauna, followed by 15 minutes of reflection on gratitude, which is I still like to do, followed by getting dressed, get to my office. Some days I get 20, 30 minutes in the gym. I hurry up home, jump in the shower, throw on some clothes and go. It's not the greatest, but I got that in. And the days I skip, I feel terrible about it. So I think it's not, don't be perfect, just be intentional. And then it's just an incremental stage. And then eventually, like I said, if you don't fall in love with the process, it's hard to make it stick. You can lose 50, 60 pounds, but you hated dieting, you hated exercise. You could, try to make this corporate increase in salary, grow in your business. But if it's all about just the next promotion and it's all about just the salary and it's not like, I want to be creative, I want to make innovative things in my office, you'll get to it and it won't have any value to you. Mm. So like I said, I think it's like be intentional and don't have these expectations that it has to be perfect. Just do it and let momentum carry you to, the direction you want to go.
John, beautifully said. And thank you again for making the trip down here rather, coming on the show. And your story is going to help a lot of people. So I really appreciate you coming on. Well,
what you're doing is also pretty incredible to put these stories out here and let people see that, the behind the curtain, right? Because it's, we don't get to where we are without a whole lot of support and a whole lot of setback. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give a talk in Nashville, right, coming up next week. And I'm going to start with photos of me, followed by photos of what the car looks like, because everyone wants to judge. Like, all my scars are under my shirt, you know? And
Are you allowed to show them or no? You'd rather not?
Yeah. You can see them cut from here to here.
Whoa.
There's no abdominal muscles. Whole way across here is all stapled up. I mean, if I didn't have cowboy boots on, my whole leg's purple from all the staining. Yeah. I mean, people just look at me and I'm, you know, muscular and they make a judgment and they don't, people, I would be in the gym and old guys would see me working out and then I'd come in the locker room, take my shirt off and they're like,
whoa.
They're like, I was watching you work out. And I was just thinking, I want to be that young guy.
Yeah, of course.
And then I took off your shirt and now you tell me your story. I'm like, I don't want to be you.
Nah. Well, thank you again.